thank you all guys for doing this. I really appreciate it. This is going to be fun. First time I'm interviewing a whole family all at once. So that's
I wondered about that.
We did a mother and son a couple of weeks ago, and that was great because he was 12. So it was really nice. So, okay, Megan, can you introduce everybody, please?
Sure. So I'm Megan Frank. This is my husband, Paul Frank. Our oldest son is Nate Frank and Haley Frank. Do you want to come behind us so they can see you at least? And then Kiana Frank may weigh in with her voices, but she's maybe not going to be on the screen.
That's okay. She's allowed. So what's your day job? You're a coach, right?
Yeah, I'm a high school boys and girls soccer coach, and I'm a writer. So those are my 2 day jobs, and I'll let you answer for yourself.
Yeah, and I work for an entertainment company in Colorado, and in the off season, I'm a Division III assistant hockey coach.
Yes. Megan sent a post about your girlfriend, as she calls it.
His mistress.
Yeah.
So
on the road a lot.
You're on the road a lot. So how does that work when you both are coaching and all over the place?
Well, when the kids were younger, it was tough. It was thank goodness for Megan because she ran the kids around. You know, soccer season's not too much in the wintertime, but she's the one that kept everything together.
We only lost one kid one day. That was Haley. I was on the road. I was at an away game, and my husband had just started preseason for hockey. We thought we had all our ducks in a row. Haley, I don't know if you remember how old you were. Do you remember how old you were? Maybe 8, but she got in the wrong car, and our babysitter went over to babysit her, and she wasn't there, and I got a panicked call, and I couldn't get a hold of my husband, and we kind of started to think maybe this is more than we should be doing right now. But we all survived. She made it home.
You should have just put them on eBay or something so you can. So that sounds like they're gonna do Home Alone 3 now.
Right.
That's what it's about. Well, I mean, isn't that like what all the parents go through though? I mean, whether it's 2 people coaching or 2, 3 kids and 15 different fields. That is a struggle for everybody.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of juggling and
you rely on friends and teammates, their parents, to help get the kids all over the place.
Yeah, it's a team effort for sure.
So how do we go about, because I know a lot of parents act like they are these super man and woman, they can do it all, and you see all these perfect posts on Facebook and stuff. So how it actually is life of parents with multiple kids in variety of sports, especially on different teams or different clubs, and different sports for you guys too.
It was definitely manic for a while, but we relied a lot on our kids' friends, and thankfully they were really good about going with other families and going on trips sometimes when neither of us could be there, or playing games when neither of us were there, and then being excited to tell us all about it when we get back together. But you sacrifice a little of that all together time because you're all kind of pursuing your own things, and neither of us really wanted to give up coaching, and it ended up being part of how we were able to parent our kids because we could coach them at some point during their childhood. But there's a lot of reliance on a lot of help, family and friends.
So accepting that we're not perfect and we cannot do it all by ourselves.
No. A lot of times you're dropping kids off at a rink and say, I'll pick you up in an hour, I'll be back. And you're going to drop off another kid.
Yeah, maybe it saved us a lot from being those parents that watch practices because we didn't have time. So on the road.
You didn't have time to yell at your kids because you didn't have time to be there.
Right.
Well, that works. Were your parents coaches when you were growing up, or you just kind of totally just like, okay, I want to coach?
My parents were pretty much non-existent in the aspect of the sports. Neither one of them really played. My dad played some basketball in high school, but my parents were never coaches, never. They were very supportive in, dropping us off and getting us places, but never involved in the aspect of coaching or, really even getting into, you got to do this and do that, because they just didn't know. It was kind of nice, actually.
And
So no pressure growing up.
sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying no pressure growing up.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And I had 3 other brothers, so it was really nice environment for me.
And my mom coached because she had to. I was at the forefront of girls starting to play, and there was a need for lots of people to start to take on these younger teams because there weren't all these professional coaches yet. And so my mom coached for a while up until I was probably 12, but she was learning, the soccer for dummies the entire time. And I don't think it was in her comfort zone or her wheelhouse, but she did it because it was necessary. And my dad coached me a little bit in basketball, but I wouldn't say that either of them were coaches by trade. It was just by default that they ended up in those roles.
So how did you start with Megan first? How did you fall into coaching?
Well, I studied education for my minor. English was my major and education was my minor. And so I've always just really wanted to teach. I had coached even through college and a little bit in high school. And I just loved the capacity for relationship that I could have with kids and with teaching. And so I definitely have always seen it as an educational role, and partly because of the thread of education, it's my passion.
What about you, Paul?
In the aspect of me, I really enjoyed the game, and when I was done after college, I still wanted to kind of do it, and just got into it, and then just really enjoyed the coaching. And then talking with Megan is like pursuing a little more. I got more into the X's and O's and the education and the philosophies of the kids, and I went and got my master's in education, and felt like it helps out a lot, as for a coach. But I just continued, in love with the game.
And you coach predominantly hockey, right?
I do.
And Megan, you are mostly soccer, or you coach something else too?
Just soccer.
Just soccer.
Just soccer.
And where did you both grow up?
I grew up in Colorado. That was where I grew up, and we met at Colorado College, but he didn't grow up there.
I grew up in Minnesota, and then traveled, and hockey takes you all over the place, and then I ended up at Colorado College.
Yes, definitely. If you're from Minnesota, hockey would be one of your things.
Oh yeah, it's in your blood.
So when you coach college and youth, or mostly college?
I mainly started in college after I got done, and then I went back to the youth for a little bit and did some high school, and I just wasn't. You find the level that you like, and so I ended up, after 3 years, deciding I wanted to go back to the college level. So that's the level and the age of the guys that I really enjoy being around and working with.
Probably fewer parents there too, huh?
A lot, yeah, a lot less.
So how would you say, because you guys are literally coaching all levels, I mean, from youth, high school, and college, it seems like between the two of you, do you think that it gets more political as you go up, or less political as you go up?
I would say that there's a peak of politicizing when people are the most invested in their kids' future. And then it wanes as the reality sets in about what's possible for those kids. And by the time they get to the highest levels, there's not as much of that parent politicizing, because they just can't. The kids have either gotten themselves there or not. But there is certainly a peak, I think. And I would put it middle school, high school age, until they're about juniors in high school, and then the writing's on the wall, and everyone gets pretty clear about what is actually possible for their kids.
So how can we help? Because obviously not every parent is trying to mess up their kid, obviously. I do believe that most parents obviously are trying to do the very best they can with what they know. How can we help kids grow more of a voice by teaching parents better or educating teachers?
That's such a tough question, because when the kids are younger, the money comes from the parents, the involvement, the camps, the enrollment fees or whatever it is. That's a really tough question, because the kids can't support themselves, and I find it at the college level. The kids, they're men, and they speak up for themselves. They stand strong on their beliefs, which is a lot different. So that's a tough question.
It is tough, and I actually make a concerted effort to try to give the high school kids that I coach a voice. And it's an interesting dynamic to do that at the high school level, because high school from freshmen to seniors is that full transition from being children under the thumbs of their parents to flying out of their home and becoming their own adults. And so that transition's hard no matter whether there's sports involved or not. And to give kids a voice there, you have to have adults who are championing that and giving in their freedom to do that. That's why coaches who know how to provide that voice for kids and encouraging parents to let that be a voice that's possible. It really, you do need the adults that can kind of guide that, because the kids won't do it without the guidance. They won't step on those toes on their own. And they need to be encouraged by someone that they trust, and someone in a position of authority, whether it's a coach or, a strong parent who says, you know what, I want to hear what you have to say. But that's my take on it.
Well, that's one of the things that I always liked the most, because I think kids today, and maybe always, I don't know, obviously, but the ones at least I coach, boys and girls, when you ask them, what do you think? Or how about this? Or you actually ask them a question, it's like they look at you funny. They're like, you actually care what I have to say? And for me, that's like, isn't that the most important thing we should be doing? Trying to understand what our players, and I always call them my kids, even though obviously they're not all my kids, thank God. I have enough with two. But it's like, can we bridge that gap of the kids actually feeling they're being listened to, even at the younger age, not just in high school? Because I know when I ask kids what they want to do, they're just like, wow, like, I don't know, like, nobody asked me that.
Right. And we need to ask that more often, and as many opportunities as we can for them to have answers. And it, that can start young. I mean, I definitely feel that's kind of how we parented our kids, and they can answer for that for themselves. But their voice was always so important to us. And one of the things I did, even when they were babies, I taught all of them sign language before they could speak, so that I could hear what they wanted to say. And that intention, I think it changed the way I related to our kids. And I think it has given them a voice earlier than maybe some of their classmates and teammates, but they might have a better or different impression of that than me.
What do kids think? Whoever wants
Haley, do you want to go, or do you want
to
talk?
You can.
Your parents are not listening. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's a struggle throughout all of youth sports for the kids to have a voice and for their opinions to be heard, because, you see the coach as an authority figure or someone that's there to like tell you what to do. That's definitely evident if you have a bad game, or if you mess up a drill too many times and you have to, run or skate like a lot. But generally, I think that is something that's changed a lot. At least for me, when I was younger, I don't think that I, like my mom said, had the confidence to speak up about like what I think or what I feel. But also, I don't think the coaches fostered it as well as they did later. I mean, granted, I had my parents as coaches through high school, so obviously their philosophies are stuff that I, experienced. But generally, all the coaches I had probably past 6th or 7th grade, really cared about what the kids thought and brought us into conversations about what direction the teams will be taking, or what we are looking for out of this season. And that means like not even, a goal of winning like a championship or a tournament or something. That's just even like goals of having fun, or you reaching this point, or, winning this many games, or, small steps too. But generally, yeah, I think it's gotten a lot better, and I think we can still improve, including the players into conversations.
Haley?
I would agree with that, but I also think a lot of like our confidence came from our parents fostering listening to us, because I think without them like saying that our opinions do matter, it would have been a lot harder for us in sports to like know that where our opinions stand are actually valid. And so I think the parents also, like our parents did have a big role in how we are able to voice our opinions and feelings.
So how was it for, like, you play soccer, right, Haley?
I did up until 8th grade, and then I got hurt, but I was going to play again this year. My main sport's hockey.
Oh, you two play hockey. Okay, sorry. And Nate plays hockey, right?
And soccer.
And soccer.
So I played both throughout my whole life. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's rare these days too, because most kids are not developing properly because they're only playing one thing, and parents are telling them, no, you cannot do anything else. You can only do this. How do you think that helped you, both of you, to play both?
Haley, you go first this time.
I think it helped in the sense that I was able to see different environments and different coaching, because a lot of the time when you're playing one sport, it's a lot of the same people over and over again. You don't really see different views or opinions, and so playing multiple sports has helped me in that sense. And it just has developed me as a person and different circumstances and dealing with different environments, like I said. Yeah,
no, I completely agree with what you're saying. For me, my experience with both sports it's really big, because you get different sides of the sporting world. So like you'll play a game like hockey that is aggressive and dangerous and intense, and every adjective you want to put in there to describe the sport and the environment around it, how the parents act, how the reffing is, what the players say to each other, all that stuff. And then you switch to a game like soccer, where it is intense still. I'm not trying to lessen how important soccer is, because I love soccer too, but it's different. It's very different. It's a much more passive game, and it's a lot more about team play and flow and you slowing things down. So playing both sports, I think, made me better in a lot of ways, because it like Haley said, exposes me and everyone who would have played multiple sports to like a wide variety of people, environments, places, experiences, all that stuff. So yeah, you're right. It's important, but much more rare these days. A lot of kids focus on one sport.
Well, I think I like what you're saying, because it's funny that you guys play both sports, because hockey is so often, it's so many people call it the soccer on ice, because it has so many similarities to soccer that it's incredible, and vice versa, of course. Now, one thing that I'm assuming, because obviously I don't coach hockey at all, the one thing about soccer is the obvious, right? You can't call a play. You can't call a particular way of doing something unless it's a free kick or something like that. And even then, not really. While in hockey, maybe not as much, but in other American sports like basketball and football, coaches they're calling everything. So when you are on the bench for hockey waiting for your shift, or you are on the soccer field, do you guys notice a difference on how coaches treat the play, the flow of play, and all of those things? Whoever wants to start.
Is it my turn, or is
sure,
it yours?
go for it.
I guess I You're right. Like with hockey, there isn't set plays, and you don't really have like input into how you want things to go, because it's random. You can't control it. Like it's just how it is, and soccer's the same way. But I don't think that being a player, I don't think it really was important to me to call plays or to be like, I think it was more important, I think, to have like the teamwork there where you're able to do stuff together, not necessarily that you have something laid out in front of you and you all execute it. It's more like you understand each other as players, and you understand the game enough where you're able to succeed because you're in tune with each other, not necessarily because you have like a set play or you're all sure of what to do. Yeah, I guess that was more my experience.
Well, sorry, 1 second, Haley. But one of the things, well, one of the things that I think is so cool about both hockey and soccer is that, in theory at least, you're learning to think for yourself. Because you cannot, again, not like basketball, not like football, and even baseball to a degree, you don't have someone say you do this. In baseball they may call a hit and run or something or whatever, or in basketball they say give the ball to Michael Jordan and then move out of the way, and that's pretty much it. But I think that's something that is missed often with coaches today, that it's always about they have to say something. And wouldn't you say that one of the things that I'm assuming you guys both learned is to think for yourself, is to actually see something on the ice or on the field?
Yeah.
I've talked too much.
Yeah, that's definitely something that is not, like, has helped develop me as a player and a person, is learning to think on my own and not always relying on the coach for certain plays and stuff. But that's also another thing, is that it's so unpredictable, games like hockey and soccer. So when something doesn't go wrong or doesn't go right, the coach will have an input at that point, but there's nothing you can do to change it, and you don't know how to like react in that situation because it's so unpredictable. And plays like football or sports like football and basketball, when there is set plays, if you did it right or wrong. But in hockey and soccer, there is no like right or wrong necessarily, because it's developing all the time.
You got to adapt to
free flow.
You got to adapt to the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, both Paul and Megan, both of you, how do you as a coach instill that type of thing on your players? Because of course, one of the beauty of coaching is that you get 10, 20, 30 players, whatever you have, and you get to literally help each one, because you can't coach the same way to different kids. Right. So how do you work with kids usually? How do you break it down?
Well, there's, at least for me, I was a center midfielder, which and we've talked about this as a family too, that I think the positions we play play a role in our viewpoint. So I look at it from the center, and I start with individual skills, because skill acquisition is super important. But then I'm all about relationships and how those people are be able to come together and to play together. And so a lot of what I do in training sessions is built around the situational relationship sorts of challenges. So I vary out my practices every day, but I think both of us really pride ourselves in not having the same practice at all throughout a season. And I've also given myself the challenge to try not to have the same practice over the course of 2 or 3 years, so they kind of forget about some of those plans. Of course, there's elements you have to work on. There's no way to avoid it. It's still soccer. But there is a lot about that creativity that I want to bring, and then to just give them space to be as creative as possible so that they know how to adapt and think on their own and on the fly, because the games are theirs. I don't talk during the games as much. My only job is to try to present as many options as I can while we're practicing, and to reward them in the times where they've done something so creative and amazing and not even what I saw. I make sure they know that I thought that was pretty awesome. So that's my approach.
Yeah, and going back to the play thing, I'm a big fan of creativity when it comes to coaching hockey. I grew up outside as a rink rat. You know, you go and you play. I mean, that's what it is. Nowadays, you can tell these kids is right when they start coming in and you start coaching, you can tell that they have been trained to follow A to B, B to C. There's and it's just because they don't go outside and just play. That's one thing. Growing up, we always had an outdoor rink with these guys, or just kicking the soccer ball out on the field, because creativity is big, and that's one thing. In hockey, you have set plays, but you can't go A to B in hockey. There's got to be creativity amongst your players, because you have a general idea how to forecheck, how to defend, but it happens so fast. You got to make sure you have players that just have fun and create and do it on their own.
Yeah, and then you're on that pesky thing called ice that kind of changes things.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a fast game.
Silly ice. Well, that's one thing about hockey that is so fascinating, because you're basically teaching kids to move with extra body parts, so to speak, because you're putting skates and you're putting gloves and you're giving them a big stick. That is a whole lot of level of coordination that you have to throw in there, and on top of it, you're doing it on ice. There has to be, you must see a lot of interesting kids coming through that they haven't been developing properly over time, and then they're not coordinated, and then there are problems.
Yeah, and most of the kids that I see come up at younger, it's just they're like, Megan and I talk about it. They're like robots. They're like, they just stand and they go from here to there, and they're supposed to turn their stick this way, turn their stick that way. And I find when I met me, I knew nothing about soccer, and
Vice versa.
now with Kiana playing mostly full time and doing, that's her main sport. I sit on the sidelines, but I find so much soccer is like hockey. The ball could hit you in the head, or it could hit your leg, and it bounces a whole different direction than where it should be, and you got to adapt to it. And it's that robot, trying to get out of that robot style.
Yeah, because isn't it kind of one of the things I see a lot is that you have kids who are 7, 8, 9, whatever, and they, I don't know, scored 3 goals in one game. And all of a sudden the parents think they're Wayne Gretzky or Lionel Messi or something. And it's just like, no, you scored 3 goals. It was no goalie, but okay, good for you. Okay, great. It's like, Babe Ruth, you hit a home run. But how, because it seems like that, especially today, parents especially, and then consequently kids, they're kind of skipping steps. They're kind of like, instead of, okay, I got skates, how do I learn how to skate? That would be kind of helpful. And then, okay, I have a stick now. What do I do with this? And now I have a puck. What do I do with that? And then somebody's coming 100 miles an hour is going to hit me. What do I do with that? Of course, it's step by step, because, you're not going to be in the NHL playing against Wayne Gretzky when you're 8 years old, even though some of these parents think they are. Why do you think so many parents are skipping steps? Like, they start at 8, and then all of a sudden, you're buying them $5,000 pair of skates and giving them 14 different lessons per week with different people, et cetera, et cetera.
I think parents get really excited for their kids to seem like adults. And impatiently, when they're put on that hockey gear and the helmet and the pads, they forget that they're a 4-year-old little body in there. And they really just assume that they're going to take it on all of the skills that a professional hockey player that inspires them would have. And they want to get there as quickly as possible. We have zero patience for a child's physical, mental, emotional development. We want it to happen the second they put on that adult gear. And we think it's so cute when we have them in their cleats and their shin guards, and they put on the Messi jersey, and they're adorable. But then look, we want to make them actually play like that person. Yeah, and we don't have the patience of what it takes, and just the waiting to see if it's in the cards for them. We just want to make it happen, as the collective whole of parents, not us. But I think just in general, that seems to be the goal.
Yeah, it seems like they were having this whole thing about, okay, now your kids are going to be the second coming of whomever, whoever your favorite player is. Do you think the kids today watch enough?
No,
Mm-mm.
not at all.
Nope.
Not at all.
Well, and especially for soccer in the United States, it's getting a little easier now, but I would say over the course of my time coaching, it was impossible to find games. It wasn't televised. Why does this country know so much about football? Well, we watch it 4 days a week on national television as a collective culture. And it's just not that available. And I would say hockey, same thing. It's not, you have to really want to see a game to find it. And that it's just not part of our American culture to watch unless it's football or basketball. You have to really want to watch the sport.
And that's a great question, because watching the sport, you learn so much. You learn, I mean, you don't physically have to do it, because you sit it as a mental, you sit and watch it, you can see the plays, you can see it. That's a really good question. And it's true. Kids don't watch enough because they got too much other stuff going on or something else. Or, I mean, I remember I would do my schoolwork, turn the tube on, and watch the North Stars game. But we didn't have 50,000 different channels either, right, or stream stuff or this or that,
Fortnite.
or Fortnite or all this other stuff.
That's the devil. If that game could only die. Yeah. I'm kidding. Not really. But I think that is something very key, because I actually have arguments with other coaches who tell me, oh, no, we don't, I can teach them everything. And it's like, when I was growing up, and I know it's impossible to compare generations, I get all of that, because we did not have YouTube and TikTok and God knows what. We probably would have been the same way kids are today if we had those things. So I don't think all kids are crazy. Well, some of them. Watching is huge, and yet I actually think that people are now watching enough sports in general, because they talk about it a lot, but I don't think they watch it a lot, because I would actually say that I don't even think they do watch basketball or football, or forget baseball. So many kids, when I talk to them, they barely know who Messi is, which is pretty big. Somewhat famous player. He's done a few things here and there in the last 15 years. But I would say, and I'm sure you probably see that hockey may be even worse, if that's even possible, because unless you are in one of those cities, like a Boston or something, or Minnesota, no one cares.
Mm-mm.
Nobody watches it unless they're in the Stanley Cup.
Right.
And even then, I'm not even sure that they do watch it.
Right.
So it's like this whole developmental process that kids don't have.
Totally agree.
Yep.
I totally agree.
But the expectations are even higher than they were when they maybe were doing all the right steps, so that doesn't translate very well.
And isn't it bizarre? I mean, and it's like, well, how can you know what you're supposed to do besides the coach telling you what to do or helping you if you don't watch it?
Yep. Right.
Because then you have no idea what's coming.
No, and you're creating a vacuum of robots that don't know the game. They just know what they've learned in their little insulated bubbles.
Yeah, because there's so many little things, like Nate was saying and Haley were saying, about thinking for themselves. When you watch it, whether you're a center or you are midfielder or whatever position you play, you can kind of start seeing trends, or what is that kid doing? But if you don't watch it,
I'm sorry, just absolutely. And I feel it's the same way. I've always told Megan, as a coach, if I think I know everything, I need to get out. I mean, I love watching, I love listening, I love watching other coaches coach. I love watching the game, because you learn stuff, you learn little things. And I think once you think you are the expert in this and that, it just doesn't work. I mean, people even talk about how, oh, they were such a great player. Yeah, but they're not a great coach.
It's not even, for me, the games are evolving all the time. It's the game today is not the same game that you guys played when you were going through high school at all. So this is why I think like watching in general, whether it's professional, whatever, watching the sport or doing like breakdown type stuff with film. This is why film is so important, especially at a higher level with higher level athletes. It's because you do learn so much from watching yourself play, from watching the people around you play, from watching just the game unfold in front of you. And it's just I think it's such a dynamic process where it's not going to stay the same all the time, and it's work to like keep up with how things are changing. And I don't think kids like that it's work instead of an enjoying experience, or they enjoy the experience of just watching or just playing for fun, because it's all about competition. It's all about being the best. It's all about going to the next level, and it takes a lot of work, and I don't think that they like that.
But it's also, you get some kids that hate watching it because they sit there with their parents and the parent goes, "Oh, did you see that? You should do that. You should do it. You should do that." It's like, just let the kid watch the game.
Yeah.
Who cares? And that you're right, Nate. It becomes work, and the kids just don't have fun.
Right.
No, not at all.
Did you have fun?
Me personally, yes, I did. I mean, I still remember elementary school skipping school to go and watch state high school hockey tournaments. Oh yeah,
That's fun.
Oh, yeah.
That's super
That's
fun.
the fun part, yeah.
Yeah, skipping school was the fun part, not watching the sports. I'm just kidding.
Right.
I'm just kidding. But no, I've had really positive experiences, at least in regard to watching with parents. If I was watching a hockey game, it'd most likely be with my dad, and he's a man of few words when it comes to watching sporting activities.
Haley knows that.
Oh yeah, no, he'll stand in the corner of a rink during one of our games, not saying a word, not standing next to anyone, just because he likes to watch, and that's it. He doesn't need to talk about it. But no, it was a similar experience when watching anything on TV or watching film with him when he coached me for high school. It's just, he says what he needs to say, and everything else is for us to interpret and develop ourselves. So for me, I had a good experience with it. I knew in high school that it wasn't like the sports weren't going to be my thing. They weren't going to be my career. But it didn't take away from how much I enjoy watching the sports, which is one thing like my dad was talking about. Like if kids have a bad experience within the sport or watching the sport, just anything involved with whatever sport they're involved with, it might ruin it for them for foreseeable future, and they may not they just don't have a good experience with it, so they're not going to go back to it. For me, that wasn't the case, and I still love watching soccer and hockey and even football and basketball, even though I didn't play them. But Haley, what about you? I don't, it'd be probably a different situation.
I did enjoy watching like a lot of hockey, especially with my dad, because like not only is it like a good experience and I'm learning stuff, but it's also like we can be like, oh, that was such a good play, or do you see how that goes? But it's not like him harping on, you need to do this, you need to do that. So it was a really good positive experience, and it's just fun to enjoy the sport for what it is instead of always just being about work and having to do that and do this.
Well, one of the things you guys are saying that is so awesome is that you started playing because you loved the idea of being, in what at least it sounds like, game 7 of the Stanley Cup type thing. You didn't, or whatever, the World Cup final or something like that. You didn't play it because someone told you or because you thought that's how you were going to get somewhere. Right?
Yeah, no, not at all. My experience it's funny because I have played or tried almost every sport you can think about. Like my parents definitely exposed me to everything and just supported the things that I personally enjoyed doing. It happened to be both the sports that they were into, but I went to basketball camps. I did baseball and like coach pitch. I, swung the golf club around. I did a bunch of stuff. Football too. I played football for a year in 7th grade. Yeah, no, I played a lot of sports, and and I think the biggest thing that is lost on a lot of parents today is that you need to foster just what your kid loves to do. And even if that's not sports, even if that's music or art or whatever it is, as long as your kid is happy and enjoying what they do, and it's not like a bad thing, they're not like tagging police cars or breaking windows, as long as they're doing something they love to do and it's a positive thing for them, the community, or the family, you have to support it. And I definitely received that from my parents, and I think Haley will probably say something similar.
Yes, I agree with everything you said in that regard.
How about Kiana? You agree?
Do you have anything?
I think
Like,
we tell Kiana the same thing. You know, it's okay if you don't want to play, but we always say
that if I start to not like soccer, or like I played hockey for as long as I played hockey when I was little. I grew up playing hockey, and then it just was something I didn't like to do. And my parents were fine. Like, they're like, if you don't enjoy it anymore and it's not helping me in any way, and I just don't like being there, they respected that I stopped playing. And so it's always, yeah.
I mean, the only request that we had was that they stay busy with something, and as long as there was something that was
besides Fortnite.
Well, yeah, enhancing them, an enhancing activity. They needed to be involved in something. So when, Kiana is kind of a physical kid, she likes to do things. So when she didn't want to do hockey anymore, we asked you, and what did you end up doing that next winter?
Basketball.
She played basketball. She tried that for a year, and then that wasn't it either. So then we just continue looking, and but I think it's, of course, they landed on the sports that we both love. But I think part of that might be because we have fashioned our parenting around relationship, and those sports have proven to be a way to relate with all of our kids, and it's been positive for both of us as parents, and I think for our kids in general. And we just wanted to make sure that we kept it that way, even with the outside influences that were maybe not as positive or as focused on our relationships. And we just guarded that really. We still do. We are really careful about the decisions we make about what our kids are going to do, and make sure that our relationship always stays intact, and that whatever pressures might be coming in from the outside, as long as we're going to be good and they can handle it, we'll go through it with them.
And if they don't play sports, you leave them outside and feed them water and bread.
Yeah, well, there's that.
But I think that's huge, because it sounds like you guys are not just interested in making sure, obviously, your kids are active, like that's how it should be, but also that they are kids, that they develop as human beings. Obviously they're little humans now, and then as they get older, well, they're always going to be little humans for us, but they are developing all of their interests, not just the sport. And so many times, and I'm sure you guys may have teammates like that, whose parents only are interested when they play, and then bad things can happen to those kids. So have you guys witnessed or seen or know about teammates or friends or something that other kids have gone through?
Yeah, I definitely saw that more in hockey than I did in soccer. I don't know if it, like I was talking about, I don't know, like with the environments around the sports, I don't know if that plays a role, but I definitely, the memories I have of how parents are interacting with their children in a, peculiar or even not, negative way, it was hockey. And most of the time it was the parents are so invested in the sport for themselves and for the development of their kid, not like the kid, but their kid, that they get blinded, and they definitely say or do things that aren't either responsible or, I guess, beneficial for their kids. I think that it can actually be much more detrimental, because I know I've had teammates where the parents are screaming their lungs out during a game, telling their kid what to do, and the kids purposely don't do what their told to do because they are fed up with how their parents are acting in their sporting events, and it ruins it for the parents, because they're ruining it for themselves, but then it also ruins it for the kids unintentionally, and it's because the kids just aren't having fun and not enjoying and not being nurtured into a love of a game. And I think that, I mean, I received that from my parents, is what we've talked about, but it's definitely not the case for everyone. And I don't know, Haley, it's interesting because for me, you know, I have boys. I've been playing with guy sports, so I wonder if it's different for girl sports, like how the parents are interacting with their children.
I've definitely had teammates who have been bawling after games because they know they're going to get yelled at by their parents after. And that's just some of the things, like, I don't think about because my parents don't do that. But, like, they can't even enjoy the game or what they're doing because they know if they make one mistake, their parent is going to be harping on them or yelling at them. And I definitely noticed in some of my teammates that their parents are way too hard on them for just little things. And I don't know what, like, those conversations are after the game, but they're definitely scared and, like, sad before they even see their parents after the game because they know what's coming.
I even think that another form, I just thought about this and I hate to butt in, but being paid for things. There were kids in both hockey and soccer that were paid to play well. And it's so interesting because it brings us back to my mom's comment about us wanting our children to be adults. And you're literally making your kid a professional player by giving them your money in addition to the money that you've spent for them to play the sport or to supply the equipment or the gas for the rides or the food or the hotels or whatever. You are giving them money for them to play well, right? And it puts an unneeded pressure on the children. It puts an unneeded pressure on the parents. And it's definitely not a healthy way of interacting with the sport or their kids. So I just wanted to add that because I totally thought about it, but yeah,
No, that's huge. I hate that too. I hate that. By the way, I love the poster you have behind you. I have no idea what that is, but it looks really cool. No clue where that's from, but
yeah, it's from a TV show. We're good.
Still looks really cool. But with your teammates or friends that had those type of problems, what can you do? Like, do you guys talk about it?
Well, Haley, yours is probably the most fresh because
recent, yeah,
this past season, and you were a captain for the team, so she probably had the most capacity.
Yeah, my job, like, what I focused on when I saw things like that was just to make sure they know that they had a good game or they did well without them, like, even if their parents don't think they did. And so when I saw someone crying or was upset because their parents were gonna be hard on them, I would make a conscious effort to talk to them and make sure that they know that what their parents think is not necessarily, like, the law, and that they need to be open to that they actually did play well. And so I focused a lot on that because that was part of my role as a captain.
Is it my turn?
Well,
Am I supposed to?
Yes, it is your turn again.
I don't know. I feel like, at least for the teammates that I had where their parents, and I mean, I don't mean to be sexist, but mostly their dads would be very pissed at them if they had like a bad game or something. I really all that I did or felt like I could do was create a like group opinion on the parent. So like you'd have a small group within the team, like consoling the kid that is going to get yelled at after the game, just saying, yeah, oh yeah, no, that sucks, I'm sorry. Like just being there for them is really all that we could do. We couldn't really like say something or like tell them to do something because, I mean, it wasn't like Haley said, it's not a situation we dealt with. So it's not like we have a solution for it. But I think just being there for them and telling them that, we know that this isn't healthy. We know that this isn't good. We know that you don't like this and it's very stressful for you. And I'm here for you. But I mean, you can't do anything. You can't tell the parent what to do, obviously.
Well, I believe kids are smarter than adults. And I say that to everybody, and everybody makes fun of me, but I firmly believe kids are so much smarter. They pick up on so many more things and so many more cues than adults can do. How much do you actually see of all of that? Because I'm sure that you guys see everything. And I'm sure you guys within the team, without the coach, or maybe even with the coach, you guys talk about it. Because, I mean, I've seen parents beat their kid and no one says anything. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure if your parents hit you, people would be up in arms. But for some reason, if whoever adult hits a child during a sporting event, everybody goes, yeah, no problem. Mm-hmm. Which is like, whoa, same thing. That should never happen. I mean, look what happened with that Michigan State coach, right? That hit that player. One of the many examples. When you guys see stuff like that, and I'm not saying that you see people being hit, but when you see not good stuff, how does that affect the team too? Because I'm sure that can be good.
No, I'd say, oh no, Mom, you go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna remind Haley about the parent screaming at the coach that left you guys all trapped in the locker room a couple of years ago. Remember, you couldn't leave because she was fighting with the coach, screaming at the coach.
Yeah, I kind of vaguely, yeah.
Right. So it impacts everybody. If it's just the parent and child, it's definitely not just insulated to the parent and child. It's a full team situation when there's that going on. Okay, so Nate, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like instances where you have punishment for a sport creates such a toxic environment on a team, and it can really, if it deteriorates as the play of that player deteriorates, if the situation does, so if it gets worse because the player's playing worse, but it's because of how the parents acting that the player's playing worse, and then the team's playing worse altogether because that player's playing worse because that parent's being worse, like it's such a is it a positive feedback loop where it makes everything more or worse, whatever it is, continuously? I think that's the best way to describe it, is like if a parent's interacting with their kid poorly, then the whole team is going to suffer, just like my mom was talking about.
Yeah, and I think what you guys say is exactly what I always see, because I know my kids tell me all the time, like, hey, so-and-so, they said this to their kid. And I'm like, how did you hear that? You were all the way over there, and they hear everything, and they know. That's why I always say that adults are stupid, because we think that you guys don't hear things or you don't see things, but you do. And so as a coach, because obviously you guys have a very protective, and you want to protect the team, protect the kids, and give them everything you got. So how do you, when something like that happens with your team, how do you deal with it as coaches?
Well, I can tell a very specific story of a gentleman that I knew for a long time who was very verbal during games, and he would affect the playing of his son, and players around him too, because he had coached them, and he was just and it wasn't the right things. It was negative. It was creating a loop of that sort of behavior that Nate was describing. And we caught it on film, and we watched it as a team on film, and we talked about what approach not just this player but any player should have if this was a behavior that they didn't feel was helping them perform better, and kind of gave him some tools to talk. And he, senior, 18 years old, so old enough to have this conversation with his dad, which he did. And then in a future game, caught it again, and the kid turned and went like this to his dad right on camera, and we talked about it again as a team. And it stopped. We gave him a kind of a vehicle to go have that conversation with his dad, and it worked. And the kids all saw that it worked, and so it gave them some empowerment to be able to have. We talked about the healthy way to approach that conversation, and that there's a right way and a wrong way to bring up these emotional sorts of things. Definitely not within the 24 hours after a game, and not when anybody's heated, but in a time where you can sit down and say, this is what works for me as an athlete. And we, in our parent meetings, I try to instill that as well with the parents, that, you know, this relationship that you have with your own child is bigger than that. It's with this whole team. It's with this whole group of people that are sitting in this room. You and your relationships to each other, your relationships to your kids, your relationships to the other members of this team, that is all part of our experience right now. And we have to decide how we're all going to enter into that. So it's a full season, year after year sort of approach that I have.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when I was in the youth level, it was I tried to nip it right away. I mean, if a parent was over the top, and you don't want to embarrass the kid, so I personally kind of just approached the parent and did some talking, and on a one-on-one situation, and just kind of went from there. I'm lucky enough at the college level, you don't hear the parents screaming in the stands and this and that. And if they do, their kid, he's 21, 22, 23, he'll take care of it himself. So at the college level, it's so different, because you don't hear it.
And do you see differences? Because I do, but have you guys seen that the difference between parents of boys playing and parents of girls playing? Because I see a humongous difference, which is not cool on many levels, obviously. But what have you seen?
It's interesting because I think it does depend on which part of the country you're in. So because I've spent some time talking with parents of girls and boys in Colorado. For soccer there, it's intense. Minnesota, it's hockey, different sport, different regions, whatever. And definitely there's a gender difference. I feel like there's almost sometimes more pressure on the girls because, one, they can, and the girls don't stand up as much, and it affects them more. So there's more influence by that pressure, and there's some sort of weird dysfunctional control about that. And so I see a lot more toxicity in the girls, not even just in the relationships that they have with each other, but with the coaches who are involved with those girls' teams. And there's a lot of dynamics involved. I mean, they're a much more complicated team of athletes to coach, just in general. But I think that parents see possibilities for them that they think exist maybe at this higher level, especially for soccer. So they feel like they can put this extraordinary pressure on them. And for the boys, I think it depends on the sport, the region, but the pressures, they're similar in a lot of ways. Nate mentioned the dads, the hockey dads. The moms are maybe quieter, but maybe just as toxically influential. But
they just don't show it.
They're just not maybe as loud. But I definitely see them hindering relationships with their children in some of the decisions that they make. But it varies, I think, from sport to sport, region to region, and what that community culture might be around a sport, in my observation.
Yeah, because I think what you just said connects perfectly to what Paul was mentioning earlier about the importance for coaches to not necessarily to have a degree per se, but to be educated into how to communicate with kids. Because whether they're 15, 13, 5, or 32, they're still, you need to communicate. What you say matters. How you say it matters. Because you can say the most devastating thing in the world, but you're saying it the right way, and kids go, okay. And you can say it the exact opposite. You can say something so benign, and yet you said it so wrong that kids go home crying. Because I see it, especially in soccer, I see it, and different cultures within the soccer world make difference too, because some cultures accept more verbal abuses than others, to be kind, which is horrifying. Which I don't understand. But I've noticed a lot that with girls, there's a lack of, like, a lot of parents seemingly, at least here, to shut down the creativity process. So the same things that we praise boys for, we criticize girls. Like, I've seen so much or so often girls who go one-on-one and the parents are screaming like they had just shot somebody. The coaches is like, you're going to jail now because how dare you go one-on-one on the soccer field. But if a boy does that, oh, cool, no problem. So how does that come in? Because that, to me, I don't understand.
Yeah, I think for that, part of it is just our gendering expectations. Like, we expect girls to be cooperative, and we expect them to get along with their teams, and we think the social dynamic is what matters most for them, not the hierarchy, not the competitiveness. It's hard to create that creative competitiveness for girls when the culture says you need to be kind and don't compete that hard, because that is not becoming of a woman. And so we have a different set of expectations for what female athletes can and should be doing. And the higher they get in the ranks of competitiveness, they're the ones that get there, the ones who've been encouraged to be and play more like boys. And Haley played with boys in hockey up through 8th grade. So she had that exposure. Kiana's played with boys too, co-ed situations, which we found very valuable. Nate played with girls too, co-ed situations. And I think that's a really interesting dynamic too. And some parents really struggle with that, but it gives them a chance to see what athletes can see. And there's different gendering perspectives for sure. I mean, I'm not going to say that a girl is a boy and a boy is a girl. They're not, but there are some things that they can enhance in each other, because the more that girls are around boys, the more competitive they actually become, and the more boys are around girls, the more cooperative they become. So anyway, that's my quick thought on that.
And for you kids, have you had the chance to be coached by men and women, or just one?
Men and women, mostly, yeah.
And do you see a difference?
Yeah, I feel like at least for like women coaching women, it's more like a kinder relationship, I guess. And when like I was coached by guys, it was they were expecting us to be like boys. So it was more of a harsher relationship in that respect.
When you say harsher, you mean it was just harder to relate?
Yeah. Like, they didn't really understand, like, why girls were upset about something, or, like, something going on in the locker room. The guys were like, why are they upset about that? Or, like, it was just harder for them to relate to the girls.
What about you, Nate?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with Haley. Being coached, I've been coached by both men and women. Actually, now that I think about it, the only female coach I had really was my mom in high school for soccer. That was really the only. So honestly, I don't know if I can weigh in on a female side from a male perspective, because I mean, it was my mother. It wasn't some random woman. It was someone I'd lived with for 16 years prior to playing for them. But the dynamic is way different. I don't know if it's specifically because of my mom's coaching style or just who she is, but it was definitely, like Haley said, she was more in touch with how her players were feeling and thinking, and she definitely was more receptive to the emotional side of sports too, because it's not always just about technical skill or play or it's not all about just getting things done. It's also about, like you said earlier, it's about human beings and like becoming human beings and being the best people that you can be through the sports that you play. So I think at least in my experience, I mean, my mom really fostered that a lot. And compared to having male coaches for soccer and for hockey, it's definitely a more competitive, I guess, heightened anxiety, kind of more stressful situation, only because I think the guys are definitely more about technical aspect, statistics, and they're definitely more it's more important to them to win than I think it is to like be better people and enjoy your time. So I don't know.
Well, for you kids, what does competition actually mean?
I mean, it has changed. That word has evolved so much for me over the course of my life. I think if you were to ask me when I was 8, I would have said to win the Stanley Cup, like you were talking about. Like that was my vision. That is what it meant to compete. That is what it meant to win. That was it. And then if you had asked me in high school, I would have said that it means to work super hard at something, or to work as hard as you can at something with a bunch of people, with like a collective goal, like I was talking about, whether it's not necessarily winning championships, but like just, you know, for us, for soccer, we weren't very good at all. So our goal most of the time was to not get mercy rolled because we were playing against very, very good teams. And also our town is very, very much into football, not into soccer at all. So pretty much all of the best male athletes would play football in the fall and not soccer. So we were already at a disadvantage. And then on top of it, we play in a very tough conference against very good teams. So it's just not a good situation. But the way that competition has changed is like our goals wouldn't be to win or to get to sectional final or to go to state. Our goals would be to play hard and work on this aspect of our game, or, you know, just try to make them upset, or like try to last as long as we can, or you know, just it really opened my eyes into the fact that competing is not always about winning. It really actually isn't about winning at all. Like, yes, it feels good to win, and you'll receive money or accolades or success from winning, but that's just because of how our society is structured. That's not really about how people feel. I mean, if you're having a good time, like I said, enjoying what you do, it doesn't matter if you win, because you're doing it with people that are hopefully similarly minded, and they definitely they understand you and they enjoy spending their time with you, and you're all working towards a goal. And I think that's really what is important about it for me, not necessarily just winning games. Yeah.
Haley?
I would agree with Nate in that aspect. When I was little, I feel like it was more like winning. You have to win. That's what it's all about. But as I grew older, I realized that it wasn't about that. And for me, I'm a hockey goalie, so it's kind of like, yes, hockey's a team sport, but goalie, you can really determine a lot of things in the game. And so for me, it was more like, not necessarily, my hockey team was pretty bad too. So it wasn't necessarily like competing against the other team, but like competing against myself and making myself better and making those goals reachable for myself, and just, yeah, being competitive in my own game because I couldn't control how my team was going to play that day. Or yeah.
But do you think that your idea of what competition was when you were 7, 8, 9, 10, was it because it's something you thought, or is it because what, not necessarily your parents, but the environment around you dictated that that's what it was?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. No, go ahead.
I think
Haley.
the environment had a lot to do with it, because they always had like the big trophies, and that's what you wanted to get at the end of the tournament. But once you like move on and higher level sports, there isn't really like a material reward, I guess. So you realize some of the other things are bigger than just the big trophies and the medals that you get to have in your room and stuff.
Yeah. See, like for me, it's funny because Haley kind of sparked an idea, or like not really, just a thought. Is that like I've won hockey tournaments before, or like done really well, or I have success in both the sports that I played, but it's not the stuff that I remember. It's not. I don't remember walking up on to a podium to receive a medal, or I don't remember what team I played when we won a championship. What I remember is the quality time that I had with my teammates, or the car rides, or the hotel rooms, or the knee hockey in the hallways and the hotel employees are yelling at you, or it's all that other stuff. It's the social aspect of it, and it's not necessarily all about winning. I don't know. It's definitely when we were to answer your question, yes, it was fostered by the environment. I do think that the reason I thought like, oh, winning is the only thing, and it will always be the only thing that I ever need to do in my life, is because of the people that were around and the parents, and just that's just how America views sports in general. Is like, if you win, you're amazing, and that's all you need to do. But obviously that's not the case. So yeah.
No, and you just took the next question out of my mouth, because that's when I see with my kids too. Like when we have traveled, we have gone to tournaments and whatnot. They never talk about what happened in the game. I mean, yeah, they may talk, oh, I scored a goal, or so and so, such and such happened. But 95% of the time, it's all about, oh, we had so much fun. We had McDonald's, and we had, it was windy and rain, and we got wet. I don't know, whatever. We've had a pillow fight in the hotel room, whatever it was. Or they played in the pool. They don't even talk about what happened in the game, which I love, because once the game is over, it's over. How were your car rides? Either
A
to
lot
and
of Miracle.
from.
We watched a lot of Miracle on Ice, the hockey movie. I watched a lot of that. Probably more than anything else, especially when we're going to Duluth or something for a hockey game. That's why I can quote it pretty well. But generally, I mean, it's just you're hanging out. Oh yeah, of course, every time. It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed in the 15 times that I've watched it. So that's good. But no, it's just you're spending time with your friends. I mean, most of the time when I was in a car going to a tournament or just driving to a game or whatever, I'm in the car with one of my good friends that's on the team. I'm not usually in a car with someone that I don't really like. So the memories are always very good. At least for me, they were. Haley, I don't know if you being left places or going to wrong places, it might be different, but I don't know. What do you have to say?
Yeah, when you get into the Hall of Fame, Haley, you're gonna have this thing and you were left somewhere.
No, I really enjoyed the car rides, and like especially in high school, like the bus rides with the whole team and all of the experiences you have as a collective whole. Especially for my hockey team was a co-op hockey team, so we shared with another town. So our bus rides were definitely interesting because we had to pick up other people or stuff. But those are the things I'm gonna remember, like getting back at 1 a.m. in a snowstorm because we had to go to Chippewa, and it was just like that's just the fun stuff about the sport that I remember the most.
That is cool. So if you had to give advice to some kids starting playing today, what would you say? Don't do it.
No.
Don't do it.
No.
Go paint or something.
I would just say enjoy it and have fun, because the more pressure you put on yourself, or the more you allow people to have pressure on you, it will hinder those experiences, and you won't have as much fun as you could have otherwise if you just relaxed and enjoyed the sport and the experience for what it is.
I completely agree. I guess another word to add to that would be just open-mindedness. Just I think, I don't know how young I'd be talking to a kid, so I don't know what they'd understand if I'm telling them open-mindedness. But I think the easiest way to say it is you need to go into it with no expectations. You need to go into it wanting to have fun, and the moment that it's not fun, just be honest with yourself. Or the moment that you realize that particular sport may not be for you, then okay. But you need to go into the sports with open mind and being able to interact with people and getting the most out of it, looking past the competitiveness and seeing how it betters you as a person and makes you, I guess, well-rounded. It's just it's an aspect of life that is fleeting. You're not going to be in top physical shape all the time, so you need to take advantage of your youth. And I don't know, I would probably say a lot of things to a little kid, but generally I'd say just go in with no expectations and have fun, just like Haley said.
I think that's the best advice for the parents who are putting those skates on their 3-year-old kid too, because I think expectations are what ruin it for families and for parents, because they have an idea of who they think their kid is or should be or will become before the kid has any clue and before anyone has any clue. So I think looking and raising children is like a seek and find sort of activity. We threw our kids in the sports we did because we were on a hunt. We were on a hunt for the thing that would stick for them and the thing that lit them up and the thing that became their passion, and not just for sports but in other activities too, because you're just throwing sticky to the wall and you want to see what sticks. And there's a very different process when you're letting the children kind of guide you and you're offering things as opposed to dragging them behind you where you think they should go.
Yes, and way more parents and way more coaches should be listening to the kids.
Yep.
Because we're smarter.
We are smarter. That's right.
You are. Oh, I mean it. I've said this I had a huge, I almost got kicked out of a U.S. Soccer Federation course because I said that.
Really?
The instructor was furious at me. He said that I was full of it. And I was like, what are you talking about? Kids are smarter. And because the U.S. Federation has these stupid, asinine rules for what kids are supposed to do at 5 or 6 or 10 or whatever. And I'm just listening to him. I'm just like, you're nuts. Well, I didn't say that, even though I thought that. Because I was, it's like they're making kids dumb. They say kids can only do this. In what planet? Some kids can do less. Some kids can do 10 times more because of where they are mentally, development, wherever. And it was hilarious because, obviously a soccer class, and I was looking at everything that we're supposed to teach the kids up to 13. And I looked at the guy and said, when I was 6 years old in Italy, I knew all of that. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that a 6-year-old in Germany, in England, in Holland, they knew all of that too. So it's like, why are we putting limitations on what our kids can learn?
Yeah.
I just don't understand that. It's like, aren't we supposed to push them and wanting to explore and find out if they can do more things?
Yeah, if you put them in a box, you're going to dampen their potential. Like you can't confine them to, certain parts of life or sports. You can't do that. I completely agree.
Yes, I mean, that's why it drives me crazy, because it's like, and I'm sure that if you are in Minnesota, you probably are much more aware of hockey stuff than if you grew up in Florida. But that's kind of the whole, that doesn't, it's not that people in Minnesota are smarter than people in Florida. It's just they are more, aware.
Right.
But obviously, but football.
So you think people in Minnesota are smarter?
I'm kidding.
Yeah, it's exposure. It's what you've been exposed to, right? You know, and you can explore things that you're exposed to. I mean, I didn't grow up with hockey. I got indoctrinated into it. That was not I didn't read the fine print in our marriage license. I say that all the time. I didn't know what that was going to mean. But that exposure is part of how we grow. And that's why, the more things you can present to children, and the more you listen to their perspective about it, the better off we'd all be. But we have to ask good questions, and then we have to actively listen to the answer and not assume that we know or tell them what they should say.
Yeah, and when they say something and they give you an answer, you actually listen to that answer, not just like, and you still do what you want.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, I feel like I can go on talking with you guys for a long, long time. So I don't want to drive you crazy. So I just wanted to thank you for this amazing conversation because you guys were awesome. And I think a lot of people are going to get a lot out of it. So thank you so, so much. And I definitely look forward to chatting with you guys in person, hopefully, once we can all travel again. So at some point, I'd love for that to happen. I really appreciate it. Best of luck when you guys come back and go back to playing. And let's stay in touch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.